only once, but book is such a gift that you can open again and again. Yes, correct.
Yes,
Who is used to reading books right now in your class? Anybody who loves reading books? What's your name, beta?
and me also.
Sahil loves reading books and Mohammed loves reading books, right?
Yes,
Okay, great. Chalo, let's move on to our chapters now. What were we doing in the previous lecture?
and revision of chapter number 5, coal and petroleum.
Okay, I guess we are supposed to start chapter 6 now.
Yes,
Okay, all right. I think we have already started chapter 6. We are supposed to continue, isn't it?
Yes.
From where are we supposed to continue chapter 6? Did we come to ignition temperature?
yes.
Have we studied what is ignition temperature? Can any one of you tell me what is ignition temperature?
The lowest temperature of which the substance can burn.
Very good. Who's that talking?
Sheikh Muhammad Sahil.
Sheikh Muhammad Sahil. Very good, beta. The lowest temperature on which a substance starts burning is called the ignition temperature, right? Okay. What about activity 6.4? I'm presenting a picture on the screen. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yes. So can you tell me which one of the cup will start burning fast and why? Which cup is going to start burning?
the cup without water starts burning
Very good. And why so?
because it does not have water.
It does not have water, so it is not going to reach ignition. The cup with water is not going to reach the ignition temperature until and unless the water starts boiling. So it is not going to burn, right? But the cup
Yes,
without water gets its ignition temperature faster than the cup with water. Yes or no?
yes,
Yes. And then, did we study inflammable substance? I think we are supposed to continue from page number 68, right?
yes.
Okay, who is up for reading?
And I read,
Yes, beta.
if we continue heating the cup, we will even boil water in the paper cup. Can you think of an explanation for these phenomena? The heat supplied to the paper cup is transferred to water by conduction. So, in this, in the presence of water, the ignition temperature of paper is not reached. Hence, it does not burn.
Yes, then.
The substances which have very low ignition temperature and can easily catch fire with a flame are called inflammable substances. Example: inflammable substances are petrol, alcohol, liquefied petroleum gas, etc.
Okay. Can you list some more inflammable substances? So here we are still talking about the paper cup only. What is it telling us? That if we continue heating the cup, we can even boil water in that paper cup. If we continue to heat the paper cup with water, we can even boil the water up. So can you think of an example for this phenomena? Why does it happen so? Because the heat which we are supplying to the paper cup is being transferred to the water by conduction. You know what is conduction, right?
Yes,
What is conduction?
the heat is transformed to water is called conduction.
Yes. Heat transferring from one place to another is called conduction. Okay. So, in the presence of water, the ignition temperature of paper cup is not reached. So, if the water is present in the cup, heat is being transferred to the water. and that's why the ignition temperature of paper is not reached because heat is being transferred. So the paper will not start burning, hence it does not burn. That's why it is not burning. If somebody asks you that why the paper cup with water has higher ignition temperature, then what are you going to say? If I ask you a question in exam that the paper cup with water has high ignition temperature than the paper cup without water, then what will you say? Why does it happen so?
I didn't understand what you said.
See, what I explained is that the cup with water will not reach at ignition temperature. What is ignition temperature? The lowest temperature on which the substance starts burning. So the
Yes,
paper cup with water has not it is not reaching the ignition temperature. Why? Because the heat is being transferred to water. So ultimately the paper cup with water has high ignition temperature than the paper cup without water.
yes,
Okay, so if I ask you that the paper cup with water has high ignition temperature than the paper cup without water, why? So you have to say that because the heat is being conducted to water.
water.
That's why the paper cup with water has higher ignition temperature than the paper cup without water. Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes.
Understood? Come on,
yes.
start reading. The substance which have anybody who wants to read can come on the speakers panel, okay? Who wants to read?
The
Ma'am, can I
substance
read?
which are very
Can you tell me your name? I do not know you by your
And
name.
Muhammad.
Sorry?
And Muhammad.
Okay, and Mohammed. Come on, start reading.
The substances which have very low ignition temperature and can easily catch fire with a flame are called inflammable substances. Example of inflammable substances are petrol, alcohol, liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, etc. Can you list some more inflammable substances?
Okay, so here we are studying the definition of inflammable substances. What is inflammable substances? The substance which have a very low ignition temperature. It has very low ignition temperature means it can easily catch fire. Okay, because it reaches its ignition temperature very quickly. थोड़ा सा भी temperature अगर बढ़ जाएगा तो it can catch fire, right? So the substance which have very low ignition temperature and can easily catch fire, they are called inflammable substances. Matlab it catches fire and it has got flames also. So inflammable substances can be exemplified as petrol, alcohol, liquefied petroleum gas that is LPG, and so on. Can you name some other inflammable substances?
CNG.
Okay. CNG. Does CNG burn with flame beta? Are you
Yes,
sure?
yes.
Okay. Then kerosene.
Kerosene, yes.
Yes. Then what else? Acetone.
And plastic also.
Plastic. Okay. I can accept that as an answer. It catches fire easily.
Paper.
Okay. Paper. All right. But until and unless we take the fire near it, it is not going to start burning. But these substances are, we cannot play with fire near these substances. Petrol, alcohol, liquefied petroleum gas. We cannot play with fire around these substances. It will catch fire like this. Also,
Ma'am, oil.
perfumes catch fire. Perfumes.
Yes, it has alcohol inside it.
It has alcohol in it, and other than that, those sprays which we spray on birthdays with foam, they catch fire
Yes.
very easily. So right now the video of that was circulated. You if you have seen it. Chalo, read now. How do we control fire?
How do we control fire? You must have seen.
Just a minute,
Oh,
okay? Just a minute. Who wants to read now? Who is reading? Kazi is reading.
yes, ma'am. He wants to read. He was
Okay.
asking.
Okay, okay. Yes, go ahead.
And Mama read.
Okay. You must have seen or heard of fire breaking out in homes, shops, and factories. If you have seen such an accident, write a short description in your notebook. Also, share the experience with your classmates.
Read ahead,
Find
beta.
Okay. Find out the telephone number of the fire service in your area. If a fire breaks out in your house or in your neighborhood, the first thing to do is to call the fire service. It is important that all of us know the telephone number of the fire service.
Hmm.
Does your town or city have a fire brigade station? When a fire brigade arrives, what does it do? It pours water on the fire. Water cools the combustible material so that its temperature is brought below its ignition temperature. This prevents the fire from spreading. Water vapors also surround the combustible material, helping in cutting off the supply of air so the fire is extinguished.
Read, read. Finish reading and then I'll explain you.
Okay. You have learned that there are three essential requirements for producing fire. Can you list these requirements? These are fuel, air to supply oxygen, and heat to rise the temperature of the fuel beyond the ignition temperature. Fire can be controlled by removing one or more of these requirements. The job of a fire extinguisher is to cut off the supply of air or to bring down the temperature of the fuel or both. Notice that the fuel in most cases not cannot be cannot be eliminated. If for instance a building catches fire, the whole building is the fuel.
Okay. So here, how can we control fire? We are discussing about how can we control fire. So they are asking that you must have heard of fire breaking out in homes, shops, and factories. So if you have seen such an accident, write a short description in your notebook. This is an activity for you. Have you any of you seen fire or
no,
anything near you catching fire? Any experience about it? You guys can share it here.
No.
no, ma'am. I
Okay.
haven't seen.
Okay, so what is it telling you to do if your city or town or your neighborhood catches fire? What should you do? First of all, you should have the number of the fire station so that if anything mishap occurs, then you have the number. Okay, so first and foremost thing is you should know the number of the fire brigade station. So, what happens when we call the fire brigade station? You must have seen that they start pouring water here and there, right?
Yes.
So, why do they pour water? Because water cools the combustible material. What is combustible material? The material which has already caught fire. They pour water on that, and that will bring its temperature below its ignition temperature. Ignition temperature पे कोई भी substance है वो जलना start हो जाएगा. तो what they have to do
Ma'am,
is
but
they
if
have
it
to.
happens with
Sorry, beta, I
if
cannot hear
there's
you.
electricity, then they bring fire
See,
extinguisher CO2.
If the fire is caused due to electricity or petrol, then we cannot use water. Why so? Your question is
because it floats on
be-
water.
because
Petrol.
it what?
Because the petrol floats on water and we can't use water on electricity fire caused on electricity because water conducts electricity and
Very good, beta. So water conducts electricity, and we cannot use water to bujao fire with water if it has happened or occurred due to electricity, right?
yes,
So, but for other cases, water will bring its ignition temperature below. Okay, will bring the temperature below its ignition temperature, and this will prevent the fire from spreading. Water vapors are also surround the combustible material, help in cutting off the fire supply of air. Water vapor, which is around the combustible material, will also help in cutting the supply of air, because see, three things are needed for a thing to cause fire. We need fuel, we need air, and we need heat. These three things are necessary for anything to burn, right? So if we want to control fire, we can remove one of this. Either we can stop the supply of air, either we can bring the temperature down, or either we can do something with the fuel. Okay, so fire can be controlled by removing one or more of these requirements, and the job of the fire extinguisher is to cut the supply of air or to bring the ignition temperature down of the fuel, or both. Okay, what do we need for fire? What does one need to cause fire? We need fuel, air, and heat,
heat.
right? So, if we want to control the flames, either we should stop the supply of air because it is supplying oxygen. Okay, and what about heat? It will raise the temperature. What does heat do?
Raise the temperature.
Raise the temperature. Correct. So, if we want to control the flames, either we should stop the supply of air, or either we should bring the temperature down. Stopping the heat means bringing the temperature down. Okay. Okay, read this.
The most common fire extinguisher is water, but water works only when things like wood and paper are on fire. If electrical equipment is on fire, water may conduct electricity and harm those trying to douse the fire. Water is also not suitable for fires involving oil and petrol. You do you recall the water is heavier than oil, so it sinks below the oil and oil keeps burning on top. For fires involving electrical equipment and inflammable materials like petrol, carbon dioxide, CO2 is the best extinguisher. CO2 being heavier than oxygen covers the fire like a blanket. Since the contact between the fuel and oxygen is cut off, the fire is controlled. The added advantage of CO2 is that in most cases it does not harm the electrical equipment. How do we get the supply of carbon dioxide? It can be stored at high pressure as a liquid in cylinders. In what form is LPG stored in cylinders? When released from the cylinder, CO2 expands enormously in volume and cools down, so it not only forms a blanket around the fire, it also brings down the temperature of the fuel. That's why it is an excellent fire extinguisher. Other way to get CO2 is to release a lot of dry powder of chemicals like sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, or potassium bicarbonate. Near the fire, these chemicals give off CO2.
Okay. So, what is the most common fire extinguisher? The most common fire extinguisher is water. But we can only use water if the things like wood and paper are on fire, and we can uh, put the fire down by using water. But what if the fire is caused due to electricity? We cannot stop the fire which is caused due to electricity with water. Why? Because water is not suitable for fires involving oil and petrol. We cannot use water with oil and petrol, and also we cannot use water to g- get the fire down using which is caused due to electricity. Okay. Why? Because first of all, water is going to conduct electricity, yes or no? And
Yes.
if the one who is using water to stop the fire which is caused due to electricity, it may also harm the person. And why cannot we use water with oil and petrol? Because they are heavier than water.
No, ma'am,
They
not
are,
heavy, light.
sorry.
They are light than water. Water is heavy.
Water is heavier than oil. Water is heavier than these substances. Okay, water is heavier than oil and petrol, so water is going to sink down, yes or no?
Yes.
So water is going to sink down and oil and petrol is going to burn on the surface. It is not going to cause any good. All right, but what can we use if we cannot use water for oil, petrol and electricity? What can we use? We can use carbon dioxide. Why can we use carbon dioxide? For example, this is our substance which is on fire. So if we put CO2 on this, CO2 is going to form a blanket around it, a blanket like thing. If it does so, it will prevent oxygen to enter inside. It will not allow oxygen to enter, so it is cutting off the supply of oxygen. Using CO2 will cut off the supply of oxygen, correct? Because it is working like a blanket on the substance, so then air is not going to enter inside and CO2 is going to form a blanket. Understood? Yes or no?
Yes.
All right, and that's why CO2 is the best extinguisher. Other than that, CO2 being heavier than oxygen covers the fire like a blanket. Okay, it is going to cover the fire like a blanket. So, first of all, CO2 covers fire like blanket. Why? Because it is heavier than oxygen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one point. What is the next point? And it will cut the contact of fuel and oxygen. It will, since the contact between fuel and oxygen is cut off, the fire can be controlled. So it can cut off the supply of oxygen also. It can cut off the supply of oxygen. What else will it do?
Cut off the
CO2.
supply of oxygen.
Yes. Cut off the supply of oxygen. And the added advantage of CO2 is that it will not harm the electrical equipment. So there are 3 points here. Okay. The first point is it is it is heavier than oxygen, so it will cover the fire like a blanket. CO2 is heavier than oxygen, so it will cover the fire like a blanket. It will cut off the supply of oxygen. This is the second point. Okay. Other thing is it will not harm the electrical equipment. This is the third point. Other than that, how can we store this carbon dioxide? We can store it at high pressure as liquid in cylinders. This is the fourth point about it. And also, in what form is the LPG stored in cylinders? So, you do not need to read that. CO2 will expand enormously in volume and cools down. It also cools down, it brings down the ignition temperature. So, this becomes the fifth point. Okay.
Yes.
And other than that, we can also use a sodium bicarbonate and potassium bicarbonate because it gives off these chemicals will give off carbon dioxide. If you do not have carbon dioxide, then you can use these chemicals because it will give off CO2. It will produce CO2 when we put these substances on fire. So this becomes the sixth point. Understood?
Yes,
Why should we use carbon dioxide with with fires which are caused due to electrical problems, and also if it is caused due to oil and petrol? Because carbon dioxide is heavier than air and it will cover the fire like a blanket. Second thing, it will cut off the supply of oxygen. Third thing, it will not harm our electrical equipment. Fourth thing, it cannot be stored at high pressure. Okay, it cannot be stored at high pressure in liquid cylinders. Fourth point, it will cool down the substance. CO2 expands enormously and that's why it cools down the substance. It also brings down the temperature of the fuel. This is what the fifth point is. Okay. And other than that, we can also use chemicals like sodium bicarbonate and potassium bicarbonate because when we put these substances on fire, it will produce carbon dioxide. Please take the screenshot of this page and I want you to write this in homework. Okay.
ले लिया
Take, ले लिया बेटा?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, everybody has taken. Should I move ahead?
Yes.
yes,
Okay. Chalo, let's move on to the type of combustion. We have already discussed types of flames. Now we are going to study types of combustion. Okay?
yes.
Yes, go ahead. Chalo. Who wants to read?
Types of combustion. Bring a burning matchstick or a gas lighter near a gas stove in the kitchen. Turn on the knob of the gas stove. What do you observe? Caution. Do not handle the gas stove yourself. Ask your parents to help. We find that the gas burns rapidly and produces heat and light. Such, such combustion is known as rapid combustion. There are substances like phosphorus which burn in air at room temperature. The type of combustion is which a material suddenly bursts into flames without the application of any apparent cause is called sus- spon- spontaneous.
Spontaneous combustion. Okay? So there are two types of combustion here. One is rapid combustion and one is spontaneous combustion. I want you to write the definitions of these combustions as well. Okay, beta? Definitions भी लिख लेना homework में. Okay?
Okay,
Take the
ma'am.
screenshot if you want.
Yes, ma'am. 2 minutes. Done.
Okay. So there are two types of combustion here, rapid combustion and spontaneous combustion. What does rapid combustion mean? Rapid combustion is, I can give you an example of rapid combustion कि अगर आप गैस स्टोव ऑन करोगे और लाइटर उसके पास या तो बर्निंग मैच स्टिक उसके पास ले जाओगे, then it will start burning rapidly. It will immediately start burning. So that is called rapid combustion. Now, spontaneous combustion is that you do not have to do anything. You just keep it and it catches fire. For example, uh, there are nitrogen stones. There are small stones of nitrogen, and they are kept in kerosene for a reason. The nitrogen stones are kept in kerosene. Why they are kept in kerosene? Because अगर उसको आप खुले में रखोगे तो वो एयर में जो ऑक्सीजन है ना उसके साथ रिएक्ट करके तुरंत फूटेगा, बर्न, इट विल कैच फायर. So this is called
And
the
sodium metal also.
sodium. Yes, sodium also. Actually, it is sodium only, not nitrogen. I was mistaken. We are talking about sodium balls here. Okay. If you if you keep it in open, it will immediately start burning. अगर गलती से वो stones अगर सिंक में गिर भी गए गलती से, अगर if it touches water, then it will burst like a firecracker. So this type of combustion is called spontaneous combustion, because we do not have to do anything for them to burn. वो ऐसे ही रूम टेम्परेचर पे हवा के साथ रिएक्ट करके बर्न हो जाते हैं. So that's why there are two types of combustion. One is rapid combustion. Here we need to do something. We need to bring the lighter or the burning matchstick near the stove to make it burn. So that is called the rapid combustion. And then it is spontaneous combustion. Here we do not need to put any application for it to start burning. It will burst into flame by reacting on its own. So that is called spontaneous combustion. Is this clear, everybody?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. See you in the next lecture now. And please answer me when I ask you. Okay, beta?
yes.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Why were you not answering me? Couldn't you hear me? आवाज नहीं आ रही थी मेरी.
आ रही थी मैम।
MRIT.
तो क्यों जवाब नहीं दे रहे थे मुझे? क्यों ऐसा करते हो? चलो बाय बाय. आई विल सी यू इन द नेक्स्ट लेक्चर. ठीक है, फोर्थ लेक्चर भी मेरा ही है ना.
Yes, bye.
हाँ।
मिलते हैं, चलो.
Yes.
बाय बाय.